What's up, Comic Con Africa fans? The moment is nigh. The time is here. I've got an epic group of people from Rattapallax Incorporated. They are an amazing non-profit organization focused on documentary, films, poetry, and transmedia. There's so much to them. I don't even want to do the introduction. I feel like if I do the introduction, I'm not gonna do this much justice. I really am not. I've got the full team here. I've got Ram, I've got Yusef, and I've got Ashley. I'm gonna start off with you, Ram. Welcome, first of all. The continent of Africa's been waiting. We've been waiting for this moment, and this is your moment to shine. So, Ram, tell us a bit more about yourself. Tell us what your contribution to this amazing project is.
Sure. My name is Ram Devaneni. I am the creator with Yusef and Ashley of the new comic book series we're putting out called Jupiter Invincible. I also create comics. I'm the creator of India's first female superhero, Priya.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And I also make documentaries and been publishing a literary magazine in the US for over 20 years.
Awesome, man. That is crazy. I think that we'll come back to Priya as well. I think that's a bit of an amazing comic to come back to as well. Yusuf, with your amazing background and your expansive library behind you, please tell us more about yourself, man.
I'm Yusef Komunyakaa. I'm a poet, and I contributed the story, the writing. The imagination is where history collides softly with a fertile imagination.
Wow, Yusuf, when I hear your voice, all I can hear is like just drops of pearls of wisdom coming from your mouth, man. The mere fact that just how you introduce yourself was so amazing. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining us, and thank you so much for being a part of this as well.
Thank you.
It's really awesome to have this discussion. Ashley A. Woods, illustrator, talk to us.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ashley A. Woods. I am a comic book artist and illustrator, and some of my most recent work includes HBO's Lovecraft Country and currently DC Comics Wonder Woman Black and Gold.
Yeah. Awesome,
Yes.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us, man. I'm really interested about this conversation. I think we're going to touch on some issues that that people don't necessarily attempt, and I think things that really need addressing, just especially in our global climate that we're facing now. So I want to ask you, Ram. I know you on the line as well. So tell us more a bit about Jupiter Invincible and Jupiter for the audience at home. I think everybody, especially from South Africa, we want to know a bit more about that.
Yeah, Jupiter is an enslaved person. This is set right before the American Civil War.
Mm-hmm.
And suddenly he's given the power of invincibility. And it's him dealing with that power, but also using it in a way that can contribute to the freeing of other enslaved people in the US during that time. And there's a connection with Harriet Tubman as well, which I don't want to give too much away, but it's beautifully written and illustrated. And actually, this whole project started when I went to Johannesburg and Durban almost two and a half years ago. I was teaching a workshop in Durban, and I went to the Apartheid Museum in Johannesburg, and I mean that kind of awoke in me in understanding how South Africa dealt with apartheid and the history and the legacy behind that. And then later on, I went to Baltimore to Meriwether, which is a place in Maryland, US. And there I started discovering about our US's legacy with slavery and history, and sort of these two connected together. And that led to me then contacting my good friend Yusef, who I've known for over 20 years. And we started really talking about kind of creating a character and a story based upon that.
Sure. Wow. I think the awesome aspect of what you've done is you haven't just spoken from one perspective. You're speaking from a collective as well. And I think the fact that you are almost culminating American struggle with African if I can call it spice, but they're so similar but yet so different in the same aspect. So
Yes.
I think is that basically where the idea or where the project was birthed from as well?
Yeah, I mean, I had a nucleus of an idea,
Mhm.
and I was always just fascinated by regular people that are given superpowers,
Yeah.
and especially the challenges of having such a responsibility. Because the thing about the thing about Jupiter, and this is something I talked to Yusef about, is he's got this superpower where he can't die. So in a sense, he can live forever, but he doesn't have foresight or understanding of where the actions that he commits at that moment,
Yeah.
how that will have repercussions 100, 200 years down the line.
Yeah.
So in a sense, there's a negative or blind side of having this superpower.
Mm.
So how do you as a regular person deal with that and make it work to, so in effect, support and change your community?
Sure. Wow. Yusuf, I wanna ask direct this question at yourself and Ashley as well. I think I'll just start with Yusuf. But what compelled you to be part of this, and why did you decide to specifically get involved and jump in on this project?
Well, I also know something about African history
Mm.
and definitely African American history.
Yeah.
It's a place where one can use one's imagination, but also grounded in at least the illusion of experience.
Sure.
I think
Wow.
that one has to have a certain kind of responsibility to what one says.
Yes.
And that's what I attempt to do with my poetry. So, in a way, this is an extension of my poetry.
Wow.
That's the way I see it. I think the dialogue has to have a certain sense of musicality and the illusion of possible transformation.
Sure. Wow. I
Uh,
love that. I love
I
that.
like to invite the reader in. So I think what we are doing in the context of this journey is inviting others in to become at least at least part of the process, the imagination.
Wow. Yeah.
I
I think
beckon
that is
you.
so. Wow, man. I think you're blowing my mind here because it really does start there, and I think what your perspective does is obviously it gives insight not into just into the comic, but it also gives an insight into Yusuf as an individual as well. I think that's the true power in that as well.
I hope so.
Yeah. Ashley, I just wanna direct that question to you as well. I think you're definitely gonna give us a bit of input, and I think there's a lot of South Africans, female South Africans in South Africa specifically, where our industry is very limiting, especially to a female and a female of color. So I think obviously just want to direct that question to you is what about this project compelled you to want to get involved?
Yeah, so the character of Jupiter himself really attracted me to the project. His story is a story of self-discovery, having the confidence to walk your path against all odds, being the odd man out, even when you're surrounded by what you perceive to be your tribe, survival and thriving. So his story is about freedom. I think the theme of freedom runs in multiple layers in his journey. He's free in the sense that he cannot die. Ram had mentioned earlier that he's immortal. So, essentially, even though he's in physical bondage, no master can take his life. His life is his and his alone. So, you know, yeah, freedom.
Yeah.
That really attracted me.
Wow, I think that's so amazing and so inspiring at the same time. Ashley, thank you so much for that. Ram, I just want to ask you. I've got a question for you specifically. This AR comics is obviously brand new. It's something people might not even understand completely. It might not be something that everybody in general that not everybody understands about it. And I think it's definitely the age we're moving into. But my question to you is, what made you choose, or what made you select Jupiter Invincible to break out into AR?
Well, I started doing augmented reality comics back
Mhm.
in 2014 with my Priya Shakti series.
Mhm.
And I mean, this was way before Apple even had AR or anything like that.
Wow.
And I thought, you know, AR is like the perfect medium for comics because it's activated by the images, and
Mhm.
it literally turns a comic book into a pop-up book.
Yeah.
And it allowed me, when I did the Priya Shakti, is to embed all that research and information, especially the interviews I did with survivors, because
Yeah.
Priya deals with gender-based violence, into the AR, so that audiences can read the comic and then go back
Mm.
and experience this additional level. And
Yeah.
one of the unique things we've done with Jupiter Invincible is we've embedded through the AR not only animation but the historical references that inspired the comic book. So there's a lot of historical information about slavery and other topics,
Mm.
and the African American experience embedded into the AR. And I think we might be one of the first comics, if not one of the first interactive projects to use deep tech. So we brought back to life, through deep tech, many of the former enslaved people,
Mm.
that we were able to, that gave us the stories and ideas for the comic. So they come to life through their photos, and they're able to retell their stories through audio and through the deep tech technology.
Wow. I think there's so much more to it, man. I think
Yeah.
people always see the end result, but don't never necessarily realize or know the process. Um, Ashley, I've got a question for you, and I need to read it out to you,
Yes.
purely because it, I just needed to encapsulate everything that I wanted to get to. So I might need to repeat my question to you. So some deep AR technologies were used on this project, right? And from the trailer, and it was hard to distinguish whether your artwork was being animated through deep AR or whether your artwork was being used like a filter, and certain animations were recorded in that manner, right?
Yes.
So tell us more about working on a very tech heavy project like this, and what was the process like, perhaps, or what is the workflow? How did all of this come together at the end?
So I would give Ron all of the credit with the heavy lifting of the animation, because the role that I played was just simply the illustration and formatting the pages. So typically when you're drawing a page, you just draw the image flat. You're not
Mm.
thinking about what's behind in the foreground of a
Yeah,
scene.
yeah.
And so when Ram approached me about the story and explained to me how he wanted it executed, I had
Mm.
to draw each layer of the scene in its entirety, so that he may be able to, move it however, he would like. And so a few months into the project, he randomly texted me a clip of one of the characters, and they were just looking around, and they were animated, and I was like,
Mm.
what? Mind blown. But yeah, Ron can really give you all the details you need for that.
Yeah, there is a question though, is how did because like you mentioned to us now, right? You obviously got a bit of a snippet in the middle in of your creative process, right? Did that alter anything going forward? Did that
What do you mean?
did in terms of your creative role, your creative vision, your creative view of what you were seeing, did
No,
did getting that sneak peek alter that?
no, the our mission and our inspiration was pretty consistent
Yeah.
all the way through. So even after we finally reached the animation period,
Mm.
we pretty much accomplished what we set out to do. Um, what do you think, Ron? Would you agree?
Well, I I think augmented reality is so radically different,
Mm.
and I try not to bog people's minds, especially the creators, with what it can potentially do, because it's conceptually it's very difficult to imagine, and it only really works when you actually see it, and you literally see it. If you see it on an exhibition or onto the printed page, then it becomes quite extraordinary. So I try not to, like, even with my Priya comics, really not try to bog the writers or the creators. I tell them what I need to make it work, and then I kind of work within the framework of where they're going, because I think, you know, workflow wise, it's already labor intensive just to create the illustrations and to write the story. So last thing I want to do is add another layer to them to worry about beyond that, you know. So yeah.
Wow, awesome. My next question is obviously is for you, Yusef. You obviously, I mean, people know about you. You're a multi-award winning poet. One of them being the highly acclaimed Pulitzer Prize. You also teach at the New York University, which is obviously something we can't even imagine in South Africa. But what is it like coming from more of an, can I say, academic background, with being a poet as your main claim to fame? How does that work? And then coming from an academic background to suddenly working on something like a comic.
That's interesting. Well, I've retired from NYU, but I just had to travel back a little bit in time, because I read comics.
Yes.
I wish I had saved all the comics that I actually read, realizing just how important they are and how popular they are.
Wow.
So in a way, it sort of freed me to go any direction that my mind took me.
Yeah.
And I see that the fact that the technology is brought into the comic strip, that it is a kind of friend element as well. So I was willing to travel with it, to be able to laugh and say, where did that come from? And I feel like that's the freedom involved, and not plotting something, but being illuminated.
Yeah. Wow. Wow. I love that. Illuminated. Being illuminated. Wow. What a word to leave us on there. Thank you. Thank you so much for that, Yusuf. Ram, I wanna delve a little bit deeper now. I wanna delve a little bit deeper, right? Can you perhaps maybe share a bit of the secrets, a bit of the sauce, a bit of the spice behind the scenes, and tell us more about how do you bring comics, how do you merge this, a comic book and AR, two separate entities? How do you bring them into one?
Sure. Well, I should tell you this, like, even before I start all of this, for me, as a documentary filmmaker and as a creator, I always feel research is paramount. I mean, I'm very critical of the comic book industry, because it seems like people are basically recirculating the same ideas and images and people wearing capes and so forth over and over again. And I think there's such rich history, not only in South African history, but African history and African American history, that it was something that I felt I needed to research and delve. So I always spend almost a year to 2 years researching and trying to understand the mythologies, the ethnographic, the historical, and everything else of a character and the culture before I proceed to, like, even approach a writer or a team to create it. So for me, that's very critical. And secondly, I always believe, you know, interviews with real people and the language and the ideas come from that. And I mean, I know Yusef has a vast experience, 20 years, 30 years of going into the African-American experience, not only in his poetry, but in his writing and his plays and his operas and so forth. I think that all lends to this. Now, when it comes to the AR, I think, you know, there's two parts of the AR. And this is what I always tell people to kind of think about. There's the cool factor, which, you know, you can turn a page literally into some kind of pop-up book with crazy animation. And there's some really beautiful AR comics that kind of jump out at you and allow you to do that. But that sensationalism is very immediate. And I always say, go beyond that. Use the research you put into it and go
Yes.
and enlighten the audience beyond just the spectacle of AR. I mean, for me now, I think now AR compared to what it was when I started in 2014 has gone leaps and bounds. I use an app called Artivive for really embedding the AR, and I recommend illustrators and comic book creators to look into that. It sort of streamlined and simplified it. And if you know basic Photoshop layering and how to create PSD files and some various basic animation, you can do kind of the rudimentary stuff with AR and turn at least the cover for your comic book into something really cool. I mean, I'm not sure if the time and commitment is to create the whole book, but at least the cover, I recommend at least every comic book creator to take this opportunity because it's affordable and it's not mentally, it's not complicated,
Yeah. Awesome. Wow. Wow. Thank you so much. I think we as South Africans are maybe between 5 and 8 years, a little bit
No,
behind you.
not
So
a,
now with you giving us a bit of the insight info, I
well,
think a
that
lot of
five
us are
to
going to jump onto that.
yeah, that 5 to 8 years is now down to 5 to 8 weeks.
Great.
I think I hope after they watch this video, and this is actually one of the reasons I went to South Africa. I was brought in by the American Embassy in an organization called American Arts Incubator, where I did, I think, a 6-week workshop in Durban to teach how to use augmented reality in art. And it was amazing the work that was created in that incubator workshop. And these are all by, of course, South Africans that were created it. And we had an exhibition in a gallery in Durban, really beautiful, intense. And, 6 weeks, that's all it took for them to learn and understand the methodology and the technology. And they were able to do it fairly quick and do some impressive work too.
Yeah. Mind you, on that note, I think all of our minds were watching this. I think we all trying to like soak it in like a sponge. All of this information you guys are giving us, all these insights, all the info. I think it's so great that you guys are so willing to obviously give us this insight because we definitely are spongy culture and we love to soak up all the secrets. Actually, I've got a question for you. Do you think African or African inspired stories are finally getting their time to shine? And what do you think is causing this trend?
Oh yes, totally. Because last summer there was some animation. The name escapes me. I don't want to open up my phone right now. That would be rude. But I shared the trailer. There's a lot of animations coming from Africa right now. The trailer that I had seen included a large mech. If you're familiar with Tatsunoko culture, like Ultraman, Ultraman, Power Rangers. Yeah. So just a lot of cool things are coming from Africa right now, and I tend to share them a lot on my social media. I think what's bringing on this change is people, the world society. Everyone is ready to see something different. Not that we haven't appreciated what has come before, but the pendulum is always swinging, and I feel like right now we're swinging towards different tastes. We want to see more variety, more equality, whatever that may refer to. That's the heart of it all. Representation.
Yeah. Awesome. I want to touching on that. What do you think? What give as an African American, as I mentioned previously, as an African American and female, you already have the challenges in front of you. What can you actually advise, and what kind of information?
I had to learn how to communicate with the world as well as be heard through my value and my art. I had to put more value into my work and realize that I can't just do it for myself, but I have to do it for the world. And sometimes people will recognize it sooner than later. I want to go back earlier in my answer though. This answer, it goes for other creatives and artists, but as well as minorities. Just I don't want to say, I want to be concise. You have to be true to yourself. A lot of times, challenges you'll face, people in the industry who want to put you in the box to fit their narrative. You have to hold on to yourself, because if you try to fit into everyone's narrative, eventually it'll blow up in your face. You know, the only way you can attract your tribe, the only way your tribe can find you is if you shine your light. You can't allow any circumstances to dim your light, whether that's insecurity, fear. The insecurity and fear is going to be there no matter what you do. There's always going to be a challenge anytime you're trying to achieve something greater. So it's kind of like pick your poison. You know, do I want to suffer to live, have a faulty and phony career, or do I want to live in authenticity? You know, I had mentioned earlier, you know, how people nowadays are more focused on self. One is trying to break generational and understand what came before them so they don't repeat the past. And it's all about authenticity. That's about as concise as I can make it, because I'm like all over the place, but I'm trying to.
No, I totally get you. I totally get you. I think how you spoke about it and how you mentioned it is definitely something that that we don't want to lose as individuals. We don't want to lose our identity to become accustomed or to fit in with another identity to be able to be accepted. And I think it's the acceptance that a lot of us struggle with as well. Yusef, I'm gonna come back to that. Actually, I've got another question with regards to Jupiter that I'm just gonna ask you. I'm gonna leave open to the table at the end, right? But Yusef, I've got a question for you. The first line that Jupiter uses to describe himself during his prologue is fascinating, man. It goes like this: "To be or not to be, that's totally me." What is going through your mind when you wrote those words, and what aspects of Jupiter's character did you want to showcase with this line?
Well, essentially, he is really planning to free himself. He also uses a phrase, "My heart never slave." And that's who he is, basically. He can go many different directions. He can be human. He can capture the experience, the journey, and understand something about the essence of who he is, but also realize that there's also a larger world, and he's not one-dimensional. He is multi in so many ways. And that's what I wanted as such. In a way, I think Jupiter relates to my body of work as such. I always thought that I write for myself first, in a place of thinking about who's out there, you know. Wow. I think that's important. It's a process of discovery. And sometimes the journey is internal, has a place to bend outward. It's a dialogue.
Yusef, do you see a younger Yusef in Jupiter?
No, not really. Not really a younger Yusef, but I did early on. My imagination was so important. There was no saying to myself, I cannot do this. My mind cannot travel this direction. I refused to be boxed in early on because no one can tell me what to write because I'm writing it. They have to write their own journey.
Yeah. Wow. Thank you, Yusef. Thank you so much. Wow, man. I'm feeling so inspired, and I really want to. I want to get to this question that this has been bubbling on just on my heart. I think a little bit more, and I think it might be a bit of a personal perception of how I read the comic as well. So my question to you is the Jupiter is given the superpower or the ability to be immortal, so he can't die, right? And in the same sense, the effects or the long-term effects of slavery in the US, in South Africa, globally, right?
Yes.
Do they, in the same sense, not link together because slavery in the same sense has the ability or has been given the ability to become immortal in its own, purely because of how many years on we are from slavery in America, years on from slavery in South Africa. Has how do you see these two concepts linking, and linking specifically to Jupiter Invincible?
Wow, that's a great question.
Yeah.
Yusef, you want to take a stab at that one, or?
Why don't you take the first stab?
That's a spectacular question. I mean,
Yeah.
obviously, the legacy of slavery and the legacy of apartheid, um, although they're both abolished, you can see the repercussions of them.
Yeah.
And to me, the idea of repercussions is very important, because the only way you can understand your history is to understand the history. And really go back into the history and see where the situation now and why it is and where it came from. And to an extent, that's what Jupiter has the opportunity to do, is the fact that he can never die or be killed. He can literally see the repercussions of his own actions and the actions of people in the United States, 200 years later. And the thing that in terms of legacy, we see that not only, I mean, I've obviously see it in the US because I live here, with the inequality, the economic inequality, I actually call the phase after the end of slavery, after Reconstruction, as American apartheid.
Sure.
People, because it did last for quite a long time. There were laws and systems in place to keep African Americans down, away from housing, equality, opportunities, and just it just continued all the way. Probably, I mean, people can say obviously to now, but clearly up until the civil rights bills were passed in the U.S. and South African apartheid. Everything the South African government learned about apartheid was learned from the US system, from the Jim Crow system.
Yeah.
So they literally went to, they said, okay, how can we repress our own Black South Africans in South Africa? They said, well, we actually can look at the US and the Jim Crow system and just basically replicate it. And that's what they did. I mean, people don't understand that history. I mean, ironically and strangely, even the Nazis looked at how do we control Jewish populations, disenfranchised populations in Nazi Germany. They said, well, we don't have to look far. We just look at the US and did the Jim Crow. And they actually sent Nazi representatives to the US to research and learn how the South was able to repress African Americans for so long, and literally replicated that, leading to, of course, the gas chambers in Nazi Germany. So these are the histories that I researched and was able to sort of understand and try to put into the comic book. I mean, they're not so overt, because I think that's the beauty of Yusef's writing and the illustrations that Ashley does, is you can't be so overt in that realm. So you have to also bring the audience in. And I think Jupiter as a character, and the emboldenment and the empowerment that he has, even under the repressive system of slavery, is so apparent, and that really brings young audiences and young readers in.
Yeah.
History is so complicated and complex as well. When I think about slavery, well, I have to also pose the question, how about slavery in Africa? I'm talking about if you want to have a total sense of history.
Yes.
I don't know if Jupiter can ever deal with that. I don't know if African Americans really ever deal with that, you know. It's rather complex, isn't it?
Wow. Yeah. Which leads me into my next question, Yusuf, is the superpower that is being given to Jupiter a blessing or is it a curse? Because he's being given this ability probably during the worst time, or some might view it as the best time. Because not many African Americans would want to live or relive slavery all over again, or live or keep living through this.
Well, I think it's a plus for him because we don't know the totality of his journey yet.
Wow.
But I think we have to be ready to discover what that journey is.
Wow.
And Jupiter may become more and more complex.
Yeah.
And more a citizen of the world.
Wow. 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 I think he's definitely breaking barriers. Ram? Over to you.
Yeah, I mean, you have to understand this is our first issue, and like all first issues, it's the origin story that we're kind of and you know with whether it's Superman or Batman or others, in the origin story, you're sort of setting the environment, the characters, the location, everything is kind of being defined, and as you produce more and more comics after the origin story, then you can take things for granted. You don't have to explain as much or go into as much details because you assume the readers have kind of followed you on this journey. But in at least with the first one or two issues, you have to kind of define that the scenarios much more.
Yeah. Wow. I'm completely blown away by this from my perspective, and I think I think this comic will be very personal, and very groundbreaking to the reader as an individual and as a collective as well. Ram, the next question I have is on a lighter note. Is tell us more about Brave Kid Me and Rattapallax as well.
Yes, well, I've Rattapallax started as a literary magazine, and Yusef was involved in that in the beginning, and I started this new imprint called Brave Kids, focused on creating literary comics and also children's books that deal with social issues. Like this, Jupiter is one of the first, and another one called Priya's Mask, which is part of the Priya Shakti series, and that was released in January. That one dealt with the COVID pandemic through the eyes of Priya and a child. So we want to create bold literature, really strong literature with interactivity, storytelling for brave kids, and especially for brave parents that want to sort of awaken and show their children the possibilities, not only the negative, but the positive possibilities of where their life could lead to and how they can impact their community.
Yeah. Awesome. Guys, I'm blown away. I think I'm so grateful for this interview. I think it's more of almost a bit of a counseling session for myself as well, which I think is brilliant. Yusef, Ram, Ashley, thank you so much for your time. But before we go to the end, I want to give you guys the opportunity. I want to give you the chance to tell people where to follow you. How can people connect with you? How can they find out a bit more? How can they drop your message? How can they communicate with you, just to maybe find out a bit more and get maybe a bit more perspective on a personal level?
Well, I should tell you this: we can find all of us on our website, powerofjupiter.com, and that is going to where the comic's going to be. And we decided to release the comic book for free, so you'll be able to download the comic book and read it in multiple formats, from iBooks to Google, you name it. So anyone can just go there and literally take the PDF And we hope people would take it PDF and share it to as many people as possible. Share it to their friends, their community, and really have a conversation about that. And Ashley, I'm finally going to get to meet her. She's coming to the Tribeca Film Festival, where we're having a beautiful exhibition of her artwork with the AR. And maybe Ashley can talk a little bit about that and what she's excited about seeing finally her creation up on a big exhibition space in New York City.
Yes, please, Ashley. We're waiting.
Yes, I'm definitely excited. It's an honor, and I'm just honored to work with Ram and Yusef. It's a once in a lifetime opportunity, and I'm just gonna soak it all in. So
yeah. Awesome. Yusef, are there any closing notes you want to leave with us, man? I'm ready. Preach to me.
I'll be applauding for Ram and Ashley at Tribeca.
Wow.
From New Jersey.
Awesome. Well, guys, thank you so much for your time, man. I think there's more to this. There's definitely more to this, and I think once the next issue comes out, we'll obviously get in touch again, and with a few more with whatever comes up going forward, we'll definitely connect as well. I think a lot of the fans want to find out more. A lot of the fans want to be kept up to date, so I think we'll definitely connect again in the future. This is not the end. This is only the beginning, my friends. Thank you so much for your time. I don't know, is there any closing notes you guys perhaps want to leave with us? Any way, any place you want to push some of our fans to checking out further information from your side?
Just thepowerofjupiter.com. Please check it out. Join us on social media. We want to give the materials out and have a really great discussion about it.
Yeah. Awesome. Yusef, Ram, Ashley, thank you so much for your time. We are absolutely privileged to be able to have this opportunity to chat to you, to connect with you, and to find out so much more. Guys, you heard it. Thepowerofjupiter.com. That's where you want to go. Head over there. Get your free, yes, you heard it. I said the F word. I said free copy of Jupiter Invincible. You can download it, you can share it, you can give it to everybody who needs it. And obviously you get immersed in the whole AR experience as well. Everybody, Yusef, Ram, and Ashley, thank you so much for your time, and we'll connect again in the future. Thank you so much.
thank you.
Thank you.